All right, everybody, it's time. We'll go ahead and get started. So before we get into it, this is just a standard disclaimer saying everything in the presentation is not Emerson's views, it's mine and Richie's. So I'm Michael Sowell. I'm manager for energy distribution and metering at Evonik. I'm based out of Mobile. And I've been with Evonik for 6 years. My co-presenter is Richie Graham, who's been a field consultant with Emerson for 10 years. So a little bit of company background before we get into anything. Evonik is one of the largest specialty chemical companies in the world. We just completed acquisitions of Air Products chemical divisions and Huber's silica division. The site in Mobile is becoming an industrial park now, and we already have 28 production units, 4 of which are third parties. We have Bayer, BASF, United Initiators, and SKW. And we just got finished in Mobile with a $500 million investment plan where we did a lot of infrastructure upgrades and expansions for some of these new plants. So again, the presentation is mainly going to be about what's going on at the Mobile facility. So there we have a lot of different Emerson products. We have Delta V, Device Manager, Machinery Manager. You see the whole list. I don't need to read all of them. But so today we're going to talk about, I'll give you a little background of where Evonik was and where they're going. And we'll talk about the network architecture that we use to achieve our goals. Richie will come back and talk with pervasive sensing. I'll talk about the business case and give a summary on some of the events. So before I get into anything, I just wanted to gauge the crowd a little bit. How many people in here have device managers that they're responsible for? Okay. How many people have machinery manager, machinery health manager? Okay, good. So, background. At Evonik, we realized that there were really no more low-hanging fruit to improve our reliability. We had inspection plans, we were using vibration analysis, we were monitoring all kinds of equipment, but we still needed to find the next level. So, end of 2016, we started Project Lighthouse to look for more applications, look for ways we could improve, and try to become the lighthouse or the beacon for the region for Evonik, and be a resource for the rest of the region. So the thing that we were looking at was that we have lots of data, but the data is not in front of the right people at the right time. You've probably heard that a lot at the conference. That was one of our main goals. So as we started looking at the data, we also realized that there's a lot of data that we could feed into some analytics. Richie's going to talk about that in a little while. And then, everybody's worried about cost. So we were looking for ways that we could centralize services in Mobile to reduce costs in Mobile, also reduce costs for other sites. So we've been doing vibration analysis for years. The Mobile facility is a large site, so we've had our local experts, but we're trying to move towards the centralized enterprise that we had talked about. We talked about looking at going globally, but we decided that it's best to just go region by region. So we're trying to establish ourselves in Mobile to have subject matter experts that can support the rest of the region. So the network architecture that we had to work for, we have very strict corporate security IT requirements. I'm sure that most of the people in the room have had to deal with that. So we were looking for a way that we could use existing approved solutions and structure our solution with Emerson based on that. So we had to look and make sure that whatever we did, we could access this from any of the sites in US, Mexico, and Canada. So we're trying to help the NAFTA region. That's the way that Evonik breaks out this area. And whatever we did, we were going to start implementing infrastructure across various sites. So just to get a picture, this is the NAFTA region for Evonik. So down at the bottom, this is where Mobile, Alabama is located. And you can see we have sites all across US, Canada, and Mexico. And so we'll talk a little bit about New Orleans facility in a few minutes. So we looked a lot at the Plantweb ecosystem that Emerson offers. We already had several of the products in place, but Richie's going to talk more about this as we get into it. So a major concern that everyone has is getting information from the plant floor, level 0, level 1, up to someplace where it's accessible for the rest of the plant, for the rest of the people. So this shows a basic overview of network architecture that's been in place at Evonik for several years now. I'm going to take a few minutes to just go through this in detail. If there's any questions, please let me know, because all the rest of the slides on the architecture build off of this. So you can see we have a end user sitting on the office network. So this would be your workstation that you do your day-to-day work, your email, things like that. And our AspenTech data historian is on the office network. So the end user is able to access this data without a problem, without special approvals or requirements. So we go down from the office network through one firewall to what's called the DMZ network, which is meant to be an isolation between the office and the PDN. And this is a server. SIM-IO server is just a buffer for feeding data to Aspen. I'll talk about that a little bit more in detail. But from the DMZ, you go down one more level to another firewall to the DCS Process Data Network, or PDN. So this is the first network that has a connection to any of our Delta V servers. So we show, on this drawing, we can show the app station and the AMS device manager. Also, the same level, we have another SCADA system, which has its own PDN. So SCADA is supervisory control and data acquisition, are basically a metering network. So both these are in place. These have been in place for several years now, and this was approved by IT. So what is the typical data flow for this is that OPC data originates out of the Delta V app station through one level of firewall, buffers into the SIM-IO server, through the firewall again up to the Aspen IP21 server. Our SCADA server has a similar function that feeds OPC data into the SIM-IO and then up another level to the AspenTech. Again, so all the data flow is happening at the lower levels. No users have to remote into this lower level to get access. It all happens across the office network. So what we're doing now is we work with Emerson a lot. We wanted to mirror exactly what we were doing on the data historian. So you can see where we had a SIM-IO server before, we have what they call an ARES ASI or ASI server. And this is meant to be basically a data buffer between all of your sources for data on the process data network and then the ARES interface on the office network. So it's the same principle that diagnostic information alarms come from AMS device manager and then are pushed up to the ARES level. The way that we see this, the way it's starting to work right now, is our end users are able to access ARES data through a web page without any special requirements. But our technicians are remoting one level down into the network and accessing everything from this client software. The reason for this is that these are special people that are going to be doing more of your analytical works. It's not your plant engineers that's looking for just basic reports. So by putting the AMS Machinery Manager client here, he's able to access the web page from ARES and also access the database from Machinery Manager at a lower level. So we're doing this right now. We have connections to all of these except for Insight, and we hope to see that in the future, near future. Richie will talk about that in a little bit. Any questions about the architecture or the flow? No. Okay. So this is a complete architecture for our site services group. So this basically includes, this represents the DCS system associated with our utilities DCS system. Our SCADA system is for energy distribution across the site. Our maintenance organization is responsible for the machinery manager, the analytics servers from our corporate engineering group. So it's a collaborative effort on all of these different servers. But to get to this point, it's taken a lot of time and a lot of work. We've been working on this for several years. We've made progressions, learned some lessons. About 5 years ago, we put in our first SCADA system that had a web server that was accessible from the DMZ. And what we learned from that was that IT allowed it for the time being. Users from the office network are able to access the web page to get their SCADA information, but that's only really a solution in Mobile. So as we're trying to grow and offer services outside of Mobile, that's becoming problematic for IT to route the traffic. So that was a learning curve. It's still serving a purpose, but that's going to be a major problem for us in the future, and we're going to have to do something. So this solution that Emerson helped us work out with ARES is the optimal solution for what IT is wanting. So the next step that we're going to do is begin to offer this as a service to other plants and business units within Mobile. So there's two options that we see for a internal service option. That we can connect an AMS device manager in a plant to our ARES, to the ARES ASI, and then onto the ARES web server. So the problem with this for Evonik is that this requires an agreement between site services or the TI business line and then the actual production units. This is a long process. I don't know how other plants are, but this actually goes to two different groups for approval in Germany. So this may take months just to get approval between the business units. Another option that we're providing, we have infrastructure that Richie's going to talk about, that extends the process data network all across our north and south sites to all 28 units. So we can hang additional devices off the process data network in Mobile without a problem, and monitor it just like it's our equipment. And then also what we've done over the last several months, it's taken a long time to get the approval, but we've extended our process data network across our WAN to New Orleans and Omaha, Nebraska. So right now we have a wireless gateway with two 9420s that we're monitoring in New Orleans, and we've got 17 power meters that we're monitoring from Omaha, Nebraska. And as far as all of these machines know, they're all on the same network. Doesn't cause any problems, but it took a long time to be able to get to that point. So I'm going to turn it over to Richie now.
Thank you, Michael. So I'm going to go over a little bit of the wireless network that they put in, the installation of the Plantweb Insight applications, and the installation of the ARES for alert and mobile access. So has anybody out here got any Plantweb Insight applications installed? Is anybody using those? How about ARES? Anybody have ARES installed? Okay. So this is kind of new. Looks like it's real new to the industry out there then, huh? So this is the Plantweb digital ecosystem for Emerson. We've all seen this. Probably everybody's seen this several times today already. But Michael just went through the architecture they used to move information from the pervasive sensing level up into the application, office, remote level up here. So Michael just covered that, and so we're going to move into the plant network for the Mobile site. So this is a wireless HART network. This is actually a snapshot from AMS wireless snap-on. I'm sure some of y'all probably recognize this. But this is the north site at Evonik. Evonik has two sites. They have a north and south site. And this is the north site, and this is the coverage area for their wireless HART network on the north site. Just to give you an idea, this area is about a mile long and about a half a mile wide. And they've got 12 gateways scattered down scattered down this sleeper way, if I can get back to it, right here, down this sleeper way. They've got 12 gateways scattered down this sleeper way, which gives them entire coverage, more or less, of the north site. So Evonik in 2015 implemented this project called ARES. They implemented this project to gather utilities information so that they could build individual units in this north site. And each one of these blocks is basically a unit. So as Michael said earlier, there's 28 different plants on this site. So as you can imagine, there's quite a few different units in the north side. And the whole purpose of that project was to provide utilities metering so that they could build these individual customers, because you can't really get better at what you're doing unless you know what you're doing. So by putting in those utility meters, It drives the customers to, get better at energy cost and energy savings. So they were measuring things like cooling water, chiller water, electricity, steam, air, all going back to the wireless HART network, either via a wired device or a wired device with a thumb on it, or a wireless device, and then the SCADA system that they had the electrical system set up on. So the whole purpose of the initial project, like I said, was for utilities monitoring, but with the network installed in 2016, they started another project called Project Lighthouse. And that project was for the purpose of increasing their use of predictable maintenance. So they wanted to put in asset monitoring devices. So they operate in this space more or less right here normally, but they wanted to get into this space, this predictive maintenance space. They wanted to use some of the applications that Emerson has available, along with their wireless HART network, and deploy a system that they could, take advantage of predictive monitoring. So the first thing they did is they employed Plantweb Insights, and they employed the steam trap monitoring software. They did this about 6 months ago. So they've had about 6 months of runtime with it. They've gotten several traps that have come up as failed off of the application. And so they feel pretty comfortable that it's working really well. About a month ago, Emerson came out and released the pump app for Plantweb Insights. Evonik installed that about a month ago, so they really haven't had a good chance to get some runtime with it. One of the things that's coming on Plantweb Insights in the next month is an OPC UA connection, which will allow information from wired networks to be funneled into this application as well, which will give it more data to do better analysis with. So, of course, wireless pressure gauge is available, and the heat exchanger apps are both available. And 2018, they're supposed to be releasing some more of these apps. Evonik also installed a suite of AMS products. So they installed the AMS Machinery Manager and the AMS Device Manager. They have a Delta V system in the utilities block, and the Delta V system communicates with the AMS Device Manager. The Machinery Manager is communicating with the AMS 6500, which I think y'all might have seen on one of the previous slides Michael had up, as well as their AMS 2140s, which are the handheld devices that the reliability routine checks that they make. So, and all that is feeding on that network. So that all feeds into the ARES platform. So ARES is kind of like the switchboard for all of your platforms, right? So it sits out there, and as users request information, it takes the information from the various platforms and plugs it into where it needs to go. So Evonik right now they have connected to their AMS ARES system, they have the wireless gateway network out there on the north side and the south side, as well as the networks at the remote sites like New Orleans and Blair, Nebraska. They also have the AMS Device Manager is tied into AMS ARES right now. So that gives them both the wired devices and the wireless devices on the AMS Device Manager network. Coming in November, they're going to be installing the AMS ARES that will allow them to get their AMS 6500, which is their online vibration, and the AMS 2140, which is, of course, the portable devices they use to collect information off of. All that will be able to feed through ARES. 2018, we're supposed to see Plantweb Insights is going to be available to ARES. And then in the future, don't know a date right now, but the future is Plantweb Advisor will be tied into ARES as well. So And this gives them, this gives them a lot of flexibility to have access to all that information. So, and it's part of their progress toward, maintenance, predictive maintenance. So this is kind of an overview of what ARES can provide. So you can get, asset health. You can collaborate with multiple users at multiple sites. The whole purpose of implementing all this for Evonik is to be able to centralize subject matter experts at the Mobile location and provide that service across the NAFTA region. So by using ARES, they can do that. They can collaborate with people in different regions of the country out of Mobile, or they can have experts, experts at another location that they can collaborate with. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Michael.
Thanks. So for the business case, Richie alluded to this a little bit earlier, but you can't improve what you can't measure. So I wish I could stand up right now and say that Evonik saved millions of dollars by improving reliability and reducing costs, but we just haven't got there yet. I can say that Evonik management, especially the management in Mobile, has been very supportive of this idea that we have to get these systems in or we're going to be behind and we're not going to be able to proceed. So what we do expect to happen is a transformation in our maintenance. We're trying to get, instead of waiting on the plants to call the maintenance group and say, something's broke, please come help me. We want, as a maintenance organization, we want to be able to call them and tell them something's wrong, something's about to happen, and we've already planned a way to fix it for you. But that's going to come with time. It's almost that the technology was the easy part. Now we have to go behind and change people's attitudes. So we're still waiting on results. But right now we do have a lot of infrastructure that's configured, it's set up. We're sharing that across sites, and we have started centralized. We're working to centralize the services across NAFTA right now. So we're trying to look at ways that we can use Evonik people instead of using an outside contractor to provide analytics. So in summary, we're able right now to offer continuous monitoring of equipment across NAFTA. So we're monitoring equipment in our utilities group. We're monitoring equipment across the north site in Mobile, and also in Blair, Nebraska, or Omaha, Nebraska, and New Orleans. So we think that we're blazing the trail for all of NAFTA for doing this IT approval. I've personally been talking with ITs for about 2 years to offer energy monitoring services to other sites. We had a very focused effort within the last 9 months to offer this services to other sites, and we just had it approved in September. So this was a very difficult time for us. When we talk about just the hours that we would spend dealing with IT, that most sites couldn't afford to be able to take that hit. So we think that's a big benefit for our other sites. So our goal is not to provide services at the same cost. Our goal is to provide better services at lower costs. We're still working on that cost model right now. That's the next phase of our project. But we're already finding out areas that our data can be used in other ways. We're working with our corporate engineering group to work on big data efforts. We're starting to launch that now internally. And we're continuing to develop more and better SMEs in Mobile. So we've always had our subject matter experts for analytics, for vibration, but we think that we're going to need more of those in the future as we support the NAFTA region, and we see the growth that there'll be other areas that we develop subject matter experts. So I've got some more links to some of the information, but is there any questions anybody has?
You mentioned big data, right? So you
Yes.
started already to have a machine learning model. For which application?
We're starting very basic right now. The question was about big data. So right now what we're working on, we piloted a project with GE last year to use GE Predix to model one of our chillers. And it wasn't necessarily machine learning, but anomaly detection. It worked fairly well. The surprising thing, I think that everybody that I've talked to that's delved into this, is we found bad instrumentation. On a brand new chiller, we found bad instrumentation. It was hooked, either the instruments were wrong, hooked up incorrectly. But we did start to detect some problems. What we've realized again is that was another learning process for us. We see benefit, but corporately we decided not to let that data go outside the plant. So we've shifted that model to inside. So we're still very early. Again, we're literally launching this week to present at a conference next week that we're going to do this internal to the site. So, but we see different levels too. That's another big thing is that Insight is going to offer us very easy, very quick solutions. The pump app, I'm very pleased with that. We're just waiting on the OPC DA connector. But we think that there's going to be 3 levels of services that we provide. Monitoring, basic analytics, and then there's going to be a level where we monitor, say, a chiller, and then there's going to be a level where we monitor a system. We're still a ways out from monitoring systems. Any more questions?
Yeah, can you expand a little bit on your utility leadership plan? How many are you using wireless meters? What are you doing with the data?
Okay. So the question's about our utility monitoring. So Mobile is probably a unique site for most. So it's really a industrial park. So we have third parties on site now also. So we've installed, we've spent a lot of money upgrading our electrical meters. We had mechanical meters up till about 2 years ago. And so we made an effort. We've replaced over 200 electrical meters within the last 5 years. Yes, a lot of investments in Mobile. But we see that starting to feed other projects now. The power meters are wired at this point. Emerson does offer through, I can't remember the company that was acquired, but there is an offering for wireless power meter. Thermodisc. Okay, so we have issues, POs for 2 of those. We're going to try those out. I think that's going to be a sweet spot that we have to find for power meters because the wired devices provide much more analytics if you're a power guy. I'm a power guy, but they provide a lot more analytics if you do wired devices, but there are going to be instances where we use wireless too. Okay, I think there was a question in the back. Yeah.
I have a question. You mentioned I think a few times that IT was a hurdle in delays. Is that correct?
Yes, IT was. I'm,
But I just want to point out that you and IT both work for the same company. What do you think? I can't say anyone else here.
the problem that we're having may be a very specific problem. I'll try to go back to the slide. So there's been very large shifts in focus for our IT group. So previously, they had been responsible for all kinds of applications, and we're outsourcing. We had went to a time where they had outsourced everything. They took over everything again. Now we're starting to outsource certain things they're not responsible for. So they're responsible for everything on the office network, all the hardware and operating systems in the DMZ, and they can't mess with the lower levels. What we see is they're trying to actually form a group to get into that space where they're trying to take over what we consider our space. So it should work that we're working together. I am a firm believer that you should let people do what they're good at. I try to let IT manage what they're good at. When they start getting into a process data network where they can shut a plant down, that's not a good place for those people to be. So good comments, but hasn't worked that way for us. Yes?
On your next slide, you show basically an extension of
Yes.
your PDN. Is there any concern on the capacity of devices as this expands for more applications?
So we're looking at that, and I will brag on our IT department a little bit. They were slow, but they came to the party. We're only able to do this because our IT group is working. So we're using a mixture of installations that I can't really get into the details of with VPNs and everything. So what we found was one way that we were going to provide the solution to New Orleans for was to provide a special network dedicated entirely to this process data network extension, which sounds easy, but the location of the plant had a physical limitation that they could only receive, it was either 2 megabit or 10 megabit connections, and that was it. So we had to order a complete new line of service. Blair, Nebraska, Omaha, Nebraska was in an area that we were going to have to order a line of service also, but we found out we were limited by fiber connectivity to the site. So that's going to be the biggest issue for us going forward. The way we're trying to approach that is that we're working with IT. This is an area that they're working with us, and we've prepared a list of all the sites that we're attempting to approach, and we're going to address those one at a time so that whenever somebody calls us and says, we want service, we can tell them, this is the ticket you have to put in. You can expect, I'm not exaggerating, but 3 to 6 months to extend have the IT infrastructure from the telecom, and then this is what we can provide when it gets there. As far as bandwidth itself, from what we've seen so far, the bandwidth is very limited. We're doing testing for, again, Omaha, Nebraska has 17 power meters, so that's one scenario. New Orleans has vibration data. That's completely different. We're analyzing both of those to look, but for now, what we've seen is a 2 megabit connection will actually be sufficient for a certain number of devices. So, good question, though. Any other questions? Yes?
You said you were getting the advisor suite in the future. Is that going to create a conflict with having Aspen already in?
So we.
That conversation in?
So we don't see that Aspen, the question was, what about advisor in the future, and how is that going to conflict with different things? So we don't see that that advisor is going to conflict with Aspen. We do know that advisor uses an OSI Pi server. We talked with them actually today more about that. So we think Aspen Tech will actually feed data into advisor. What we're concerned about is how this is going to affect the analytics server that our corporate engineering group's working on. So that's been an area that we've been hesitant to move into.
From just experience, there's analytics that people like on one side and the other. So just wondering if you're ready for that conversation. When you put that buy-in versus Aspen.
Yeah, it's tough because I know Aspen Aspen does offer analytical solutions. I guess that's what you're talking about. So corporately, outside of our group, they've investigated that and they've decided they didn't like the applications that they could use. But something that, again, just like what I did with the surveillance web server, the SCADA web server, that was a learning curve for me. Our corporate engineering group, when they worked with GE last year for the analytics server, that was another trial. They found things they liked, things they didn't like. And what they're trying to do now, since they've moved it in-house, they're trying to have this set up so that in a year, 2 years, when the applications change, a new product becomes available, that they can easily shift. So we're trying to make sure that at least on the big data portion, the analytics portions, we're not necessarily tied to Emerson or GE, something like that. Okay. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you all very much for coming.